And we're live.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Committee on Community Development, Tuesday, September 8th, 2020. Councilmember Golombek?
Here.
Councilmember Rivera?
Present.
Councilmember Scanlon? Councilmember Wyatt?
Here.
Council President Pridgen?
Here.
Councilmember Bowman?
Here.
Councilmember Nowakowski?
Here.
Councilmember Wingo?
Here. Present.
Quorum is present.
From the top.
Item number 1, amend DDA for 321 Olympic, former school number 78, CDS Monarch.
This item is open. Is there anyone to speak on this item? Councilmember Wingo?
So they have applied for an extension based on some new language that we were not particularly thrilled with, that we didn't think that the community would be aware of in time before the deadline to discuss this amendment to their new application. So we brought this item back to committee just to ensure that the people understood what exactly they were asking for. Now, if there is no one here to speak on this item, then I'm going to motion to table this, or maybe send this without rec. And if we don't hear from them before Tuesday next week, what we'll do is we'll send it back to committee and table it.
So the motion is to send without rec, second by Councilmember Farrelletto. Next item.
Item 2, permission to designate developer NCC Seventh-day Adventist.
Items open.
This item is open. Is the developer on the line?
Mr. Chair, we've been joined by Joyce Stewart, who is just connecting. She may need a quick second, but she is online.
All right, let's get her in the room. This is Seventh-day Adventist Church asking to be designated developer on a currently city-owned property, which if this is granted, while we're waiting for her to come in so the public understands, this property would not be immediately sold to them, but it would be basically held for them. They would pay a monthly fee and be responsible for the upkeep of the property until their development is done. This a designated developer is only for a certain period of time. Has she joined us in the room yet?
Yes.
Hi, is she on by, are you on by video or just audio?
I'm on by audio and video now.
All right, good. Thank you and welcome. And thank you for being at the committee today. Can you just tell the committee just a little bit about your proposed project?
Yes, what we're doing is that the Emmanuel Temple Seventh-day Adventist Church has been active in Buffalo since 1923. And we've been at various locations within the Ellicott and some of the Masson district. And then our last location was, it's 300 Adams, that's at Adams and Peckham Street. And now the building is too large and it's not meeting the needs of our congregation. And we were looking to build at a new location, and we found the location at Genesee and Jefferson Street. And we knew that that would be best to meet the community and meet the community needs. Besides our needs, it's also the community needs. We wanted to make sure that we enhance the quality of life within the community and bring something that would have a positive, be positive for the environment in the area and also for the neighborhood. So we've developed a worship center, but also a community center that would be open to all of the community, and that they can use it for either a gymnasium or for banquets or for meetings and so forth. And we want it to be available so that the community would be a part of, what we're doing. And also a place that we really want to have something that the youth can come to that would be very positive for youth. So this is part of what we want to do there. We're looking forward to doing, and we've gotten support from the community associations and also the Black clubs. We got support from the businesses that are there. You know, they're looking forward to it. And, you know, so we're looking forward to just bringing our new church, worship center, and community center to an area that would be beneficial for all. It's also all on one level, and that way it's going to be very easy for anyone. If you're a senior, if they have an issue with this mobility or whatever, so that people can get in. And I shouldn't say seniors, I'm a senior and I can still walk up and down stairs. However, we do have to think about the future. So we want to make sure it's something that's going to be positive for the community.
Thank you. Council members, any questions? I just encourage you to make sure that those folks who are supporting it, that you get that in writing, especially from the businesses. We know that you have a process to go through with planning board and all that kind of stuff, and even possibly zoning. I'm not sure what your plans are, but the earlier you can get to those neighbors and the earlier you can get their support, I've found that it's the easier that these type of projects go. If the community, of course, is supportive, you will be the second major church to do a major project on Jefferson Avenue, as First Calvary is doing a major project now. Ms. Stewart?
Yes, I would like to say that we do have letters of support.
Good.
From the community, the Pratt Willard community, also the Willard Park Black clubs that are in the area, and the two businesses that are right across the street and would be next to it on the other side of the street have also, and the neighbors that are directly affected, this would be adjacent on Jefferson Street. And then we also have one for Dr. Gresham, who bought the property on Genesee Street. So we have those letters of support, and we just went through a couple of weeks ago the planning board, and the planning board has approved us to go forward.
Very good. Thank you very much. Majority Leader, the motion would be to approve.
Motion is to approve.
Second by Council Member, is Council Member Scanlon on? I want to throw him up. Is he on? Council Member Scanlon. Next item. Thank you, Ms. Stewart.
Item number
Thank
3,
you.
Commission on Citizens' Rights and Community Relations, 2019 to 2020 Annual Report.
Items open.
This item is open. This is from a resolution that I wrote to ask the Citizens' Rights, Community Relations, and Community Relations to provide what is by charter supposed to come to the council. As I asked for it, the commission was already writing it, so I'm thankful for that. Do we have?
Yes, we've been joined by Mr. Whitaker representing citizens' rights.
All right, Mr. Whitaker, you have the floor.
Good afternoon to this honorable body. Glad to be with you. Certainly, you have the annual report now. We do apologize for the delay that certainly held things up. Hopefully, it is to your specifications and satisfaction. And I'm now here to address any questions, any concerns that you may have for me and the commission at this time.
Well, just a couple questions and I'll go to my colleagues. I know that the data for 2020, and I am specifically on the historical, it says police, non-police related complaints, historical perspectives. So I don't know to what date or what date this was generated. The report doesn't indicate it. To what date is that, the 21?
That would generally be the fiscal year. So that would be, I believe, from June to June, if I'm not mistaken.
So these numbers are not calendar year, they're fiscal.
Fiscal.
So when we look at this and we see that we have maybe 9 less, or a little more than that, 12 less than what we, 11 less than what we had last year, what would you contribute that to?
Well, that varies, Council President. Depending on whatever the issues may be, the complaint may be, they do vary. Certainly, I would lean towards the unrest that we have in our city today as being reason for there to be an increase in some of the complaints or reaching out to our office to assist in certain concerns that maybe most of our citizens may be faced with, but they do vary across the board.
Right, because we have a decrease this year than what we've had in the last few years. And it's just during like times of the concerns by the community, I really thought there would be an uptick. Are you seeing an uptick after this June date?
Yes, we do. Our calls, the call volume have increased. Certainly the various complaints would not necessarily be pertaining to police related involvement. Again, they vary, so we get a broad range. As you would see in the report, as mentioned there's miscellaneous, there's multiple things. So we do service every call that comes to our office. And absolutely, you go back to the night in which Mr. Gugino had the incident in front of City Hall. We got calls even way into the middle of the night. So those calls certainly have caused an uptick in our office. As far as the actual complaints or the nature of those complaints, it would not necessarily be pertaining to police per se, but they just vary around the board. And as a result, we would then send them to the necessary areas to get the needed servicing that would fit that complaint.
So let's talk about the incident and the fact that you got calls. Did people file complaints or did they just call?
They just called. As a matter of fact, during the pandemic, one of the main things I did was forward all of the calls from the office, both numbers that we have, directly to my personal line. So almost immediately, there was just a heads up. I got a call from a former resident here in the city who was a former resident here within the city of Buffalo, who now lives, I believe, in Florida. Happened to be watching the news and just said, hey, I wanted to give you a heads up on what's going on in your city and what I've just seen. And I thanked her for the information, but there was no direct complaints pertaining to that incident.
So if there isn't a direct complaint, does the commission look at like incidents where you get a lot of calls? And if so, was that one looked into at all?
We do gather information. As a matter of fact, I certainly established a log, a data log, a resource log to just track certain incidents that may occur to see if there's a pattern of concerns. Certainly, again, if there is not a direct complaint made to our office, we do not obviously investigate that complaint. We do try to position ourselves as best as we could to offer assistance when it does come, when those complaints do come. However, we do prepare ourselves with gathering data, gathering information to see if there's a continuous pattern. As I just established a resource guide within our office that would consist of newspaper clippings, emails, engagements within the community, certain conversations we may have had with other residents within our city. And we just certainly log that and refer to it when necessary. That may be helpful in addressing other concerns.
So if the commission is aware of anything that, whether it's brought to light by the public, whether there is not a formal complaint, when the committee meets, does it discuss it? Does it discuss next steps? Where is that information at? Who does it get shared with? Because I know the council doesn't get that information unless it is the meeting public in some type of way where the minutes are available for the public. And I'll be very clear why. For years, and this was before your tenure, and so this is not a reflection of you. This has probably been since I've been on this council that there has been concern about the Commission on Citizens' Rights and Community Relations. And that is it in its function as it's set up now, is it adding value? Are people coming to you? I don't know if a lot of people even know that if they have a police complaint, they don't just have to go to, they shouldn't just go to public affairs. They should be coming to you. They can come to the citizens' rights and community relations. So my question is, if you all are collecting the data, what happens with that data? Or is it just to collect it to see, is it passed to the administration? What happens to it?
Right. You said a whole lot there, Council President. So let me try to address everything you said. Yes, the meetings are public. The information that take place during the meeting, we do have minutes that capture all of what we entail, what is discussed in those meetings with the Board of Commissioners. We do discuss next steps on how we can be best positioned to address various complaints, concerns, issues facing our community. As it pertains to the data that we do gather, it certainly helps us to best position ourselves to further our mission. To your point, many may not know, and as I have gone around the city, many may not know, may not be aware of the Commission on Citizens' Rights and Community Relations. And what that has allowed me to do was to educate and inform. So to your question, as it pertains to what we do with that data, it helps us to really steer the next steps in the direction as to what may be most vital, most important to give our time and attention to. When I was appointed here within the Office of Commissioner of Citizens' Rights and Community Relations, that was one of the first areas of importance to me, is to really get out and reintroduce, for those who were familiar, or introduce who we are to those who had no idea where we were, who we were or are. And so that has been one of the main goals, main objectives, to let the community know, the city know, that we are a vital resource, that they can come to us. We're looking for it. We're more than willing and ready and able to receive their complaints. As I mentioned, during the time of this pandemic, I have made sure that both numbers, that's the secretarial line that generally our secretary, confidential secretary, would get, Liz Gonzalez. I made sure all of those was coming directly to me to show the commitment that I have to this division, that I have to this city, so that we could be on top of those concerns. And of course, being sidelined due to the pandemic, I miss being able to be among the people and be able to address direct concerns, and really enjoy doing that. But educating, informing, making sure that from the various community meetings, wherever they may be, whether it's with the police, chief meetings, other block clubs, stakeholders meetings, I take that information along with what we gather and we say, let's pool it together. And this is a concern here, this was a concern here. Let's begin to address those and hopefully provide some kind of solution or results that will help us move to the next step in being able to effectively address those.
So I only have two more questions for right now, and then I'll see if my colleagues. On the page that says total complaints, and it talks about, I don't know what year is this? It has a 76% and a 24%. And staff, do you have this document that you could share? Screen share it?
1 second, sir, I'll pull it up.
All right, so I'm looking at the total complaints. What year is that?
That would be pertaining to 2019, 2020 fiscal year.
So I'm trying to reconcile your total complaints. So the 2019, when you look back at this historical perspective, are those the total in 2019 and the total in 2020?
What you have there, that is not the accurate copy. I don't know where, it should actually reflect 34. I don't know where it should be. There was yeah, that's not the actual copy. The final report, I don't know where that's,
So,
I think it's 34 actually. 2019, the years were actually together. So I'll make sure you get an updated. I don't know how. that one was received, but it's a total of 34,
for 2000. So,
19 through 20.
okay, so it's not 21.
No, it's not 21. The correct total is 34.
So that's for 2020. You're saying it's 34, right?
Yes,
And then this pie chart, that's total complaints, that's 2019.
yes, that will reflect 2019, 2020, the fiscal year of this annual report.
Okay, so you might want to go back and just take a look at the numbers. I'm not going to drag that out because the numbers are still very small. But when you look at the total complaints, and if we could pull up the police versus non-police, it says on the chart that 24%, only 24% were received concerning police an entire year.
Yes.
And 26 or 76% was non-police. Who else are people complaining about that either who took away their rights, who they feel took away their rights?
Well, again, as I stated earlier, their complaints vary. It would be a myriad of issues that would stem from more civil issues within their community. They vary. And again, it would not necessarily be an area that we would normally address, but that's when we would then direct them to other areas, even listed in the report. Some may be right within the city government. Some would be, pertaining to housing concerns. There's a list of them, a number of concerns. Again, we make sure that we try to hand people off, whatever the complaints off, to the department that will be best suited to address them. And so again, I just look at it as, and have always, as if we're one resource center, another resource for the city, for the community. So whenever the complaints, whatever they may be, would definitely be directed to areas that will best be suited. I anticipate, however, with again, the climate of where things are now, especially with all that has been transpiring with the police department, that these numbers will increase. We have received, even to this date, more complaints pertaining to the engagements with police as it pertains to your comment with it being low. So we do anticipate that. And as stated earlier, one of the main reasons I would say that these numbers are where they are is because people have not or are not familiar with the Commission on Citizens' Rights. And that's something I personally desire and am is certainly committed to turning around so that people know we are here for them. We're a valuable resource that will certainly be of help in meeting their needs and addressing various complaints that they may have.
So I'm going to go to my colleagues, but give me just, you said that you all meet and then you kind of prioritize where your attention is going to be. Right now, where's the attention of the commission? What is the main focus of that you all are working on?
Well, certainly educating, informing. As I stated, we want to make sure people know who we are and what we do. The next thing is to certainly strengthen community relations with the unrest that is visible and viable in most communities today. We want to definitely continue to build on that. We've been doing that since I've been here as the executive director. We want to definitely begin to address and deal with any signs of racism as we've seen this all across our city, make sure we're a part of those discussions and discouraging that. So those are the main areas, I would say, at the top of our listing that we want to continue to pursue and address: building community relations, holding police accountable, working with our community at large, and building strong relations.
Right. That's the whole goal. But my question is about it. So let me ask you like this. Did anybody make a complaint about Hurdle Avenue in the incident?
Not directly to our department, no, not directly to us.
So that's where I think that there's a disconnect because we just had one of the most overt situations of what I feel is racism. And people were there and nobody, not one of those persons, according to what you're telling me right now, called your office, made a complaint. If they had made a complaint, what does your office do with that complaint?
Well, certainly we embrace every complaint. We take it very serious. We certainly walk through the process of establishing and filing that complaint with the individual. We want to ensure that whatever the issues are, that we gather all the necessary information so that when the complaint is filed, either through our office or internal affairs, that it would have what I love to say, enough meat on the bones to really begin to gather the necessary conclusion, get to the conclusion of the matter that will certainly be sufficient for not only that complainant, but future residents, so that this, whatever the complaint is, would not continue to happen again.
So, and I know I said this is my last question, but this is so important at this time, and your office is so important. If the person who was on the other side of that bike, where the gentleman had the knife and was calling people names, if they came to your office and complained or called in or did whatever, and your commission, they look at that complaint. If it's found that it was a racist act, which would surprise me if it wasn't found that, what happens? What does your commission do? And what teeth do you have to do anything to a person?
Well, we make recommendations. Again, our abilities, our powers in regards to the finality of a situation, of a concern like that, it rests generally in the area, maybe if it's pertaining to the police, or in this case, as you make reference to even citizens or civilians, that will go to different divisions. Here may be the pertaining to human rights, involving human rights affairs, or other avenues of support. But we, from our division, we would make recommendations and encourage that those recommendations are followed depending on where it leads. If it is determined that it was a racist act, certainly we would make sure that everything we support and everything we push would continue to promote that. All efforts are established to ensure that those acts would not continue, and that whatever acts or decisions are made are followed through or supported that they are followed.
So again, because you're on a line, we're on a track, I want to make sure. So if someone complained, let's say, about the bar owner and the actions that happened outside of that bar, does your commission have any ability to say to permits and inspections, they should be closed for a year or forever? Or do you guys have that? Do you?
We could recommend that. We don't have that power to close them ourselves. But again, with the influence, with the position we hope to establish within the city, within our communities, to ensure that that bar or other bars or businesses that reflect that type of behavior would not stand, would not continue. So whatever we could do through a recommendation position, we would do, and we would suggest.
Colleagues, I can't see everybody on the screen. I see Councilmember Revere with his hand up, but I'm only seeing 6 people. So I'm not sure what we have to do to address that. Councilmember Revere, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for providing the report, and Council President is correct. We've been asking for this report, I don't know how long. And we've had various people in the same position you're at, and I'm glad to see that you have provided the information. The one question I have is, there's a lot of, you seem to be a clearinghouse, gathering information, putting together data. I don't know how much teeth the commission has. And the other thing I'm concerned about is the disposition on many of the cases that go before you. It's fine to put statistics and numbers, but the actual disposition, if there is a complaint, I'd like to know what the disposition is on the complaint. Where did it go? It didn't go up to, so perhaps a little more meat on the data in terms of what the dispositions are with regards to police. If you got a police matter, What's the disposition? We tracked it. It was sent to the district attorney's office for their review, just some kind of disposition to know that something is happening with the data and the information that your department is receiving. I think that is very, very important, because sometimes we get, numbers, you throw numbers at us and okay, those are just numbers. We need to know what is actually happening with,
Sure.
with the information, with the numbers. Is that something you're looking at?
Well, it's not just something we're looking at, but let me be a little more clear in regards to that process. If someone was to come to our office today and file a complaint, we would take their information, walk through the scenario, whatever that scenario may entail, assist them with filling out that complaint in its entirety, encouraging that there is any kind of data that they may have, support that they may have as far as proof, whether it's pictures, it's videos, it's witnesses, whatever the case might be. And then that physical report is then sent to internal affairs, who we work with. Internal affairs within the Buffalo Police Department. They would then get that, the investigators would get that process, get that file, and they will process that file. And as that investigation takes place, wherever it leads, it would be determined upon the investigator, and then they would convey that back to us. One of the advantages and benefits of walking through our door or calling our office is that we would be an advocate, a supporter, one who will walk through the entire process to ensure that the complainant, the citizen, the resident here of the city of Buffalo is not alone, that they feel that they are being heard, which I think is very important, very critical, because that's always been an issue in which some would say that things are being lost in the track and lost in the sauce of the process. So that would then be the next steps. After, let's just say it was an issue with the police officer, that would then go before the police commissioner, and he would determine the course of action that will follow. And then that is conveyed back to us, and we would then notify and engage the complainant with those results. So that is the process. I hope that helped to clarify a little bit as to how that goes and what transpires. It's not just collecting the data. I mean, that is just one arm of what we do to just better serve the community later. And today, even now, what is going on? Do we see a pattern of behavior? Where is this leading us? How did we address that in the past? And what could we do now to better position ourselves to be of help and positioning or bettering the overall outcome of this whole process that we're serving the community with?
So now, have you ever looked at a department? Police department is a good example. There has been allegation of systemic racism over a period of years based on the disproportionate numbers of African Americans that have been arrested or targeted. Have you looked into that as well? I mean, to leave the police department to investigate themselves is kind of an inherent conflict. So does your department say, hey, we have to look at this separately through different lenses, because the complaint is actually against a department? And for them to investigate themselves, sometimes it creates a conflict for them to have an outside independent review of what's happening. Is that something the commission has even discussed?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that is more of a reason why we are vital, why we're necessary, because we are an independent body. And certainly we understand that when these complaints come through our doors and then are submitted to the Internal Affairs Division, and some have said, complainants of the past have stated that they felt more comfortable to bring their concerns to us versus going directly to the police about the police. So certainly we hear that, we understand it. And I think, again, why it is vital, it is necessary for the commission to be available, to be there, because of that very reason, to be able to hold not only those officers involved, but the entire police division accountable especially if you see a pattern of following a particular officer. I mean, his name is coming up again. I mean, what's going on here? You make references to systemic racism, and certainly we know how that has not only plagued our nation and other divisions across the world. We watch that closely, and that has been something we've discussed, and we certainly intend to remain in that position of keeping a close eye on that.
Well, we'd like for you to, at some point, inform us with regards to that, because
Absolutely.
I think that is a problem, and we're dealing with it in real time right now. And I'd like to look a little deeper into that and have an opinion outside of the Buffalo Police Department. Yes, there's talk of reforms, but that's coming from the administration, not necessarily the police department. So I'd like for the commission, after they review problem, to come back to us and let us know what some of the recommendations, some of the ideas that you have.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Councilmember Wyatt, and then Councilmember Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chair. I want to commend Mr. Whitaker. He's been to a number of meetings in my district. I'm trying to get the word out about the commission, so I definitely applaud you on that. However, I think some of the questions that my colleagues are asking as far as when there is a complaint, what is the disposition of it? Is it helpful that they come to you as opposed to going directly to the source? I know you had 8 police complaints. Do you know the disposition of those 8 items as of right now?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Those, again, they're confidential in nature once they're completed, but certainly, again, one of the vital components, and I think one of the highlights of our division is to see that all the way through to ensure that they are getting the needed attention, and that whatever need to be done, whatever needs there are being considered and addressed to ensure that there is a fitting conclusion to those complaints.
I would love to get the information on those 8 items. You can deduct the names, but the time period in which it was presented and when it was completed, because I know that that's a big problem people have complained about. However, as you referred to the statistics and the information, it can be very helpful. However, I think there are some other things that the commission could be doing as far as what is the strategy for addressing these issues of racism and systemic racism. What are we doing? What is the commission doing? What are their ideas? We need to hear them become more vocal, because at this point in time, you're a hidden entity that many people don't know what you do or what you stand for. And I think that could be very, very helpful when people understand they can come to you and you can walk them through the process of the paperwork or through other departments. But I think the disposition of those 8 items could be very helpful, because again, I want to know what the time period that it takes for them to go through you, as opposed to if they just did it on their own. That would be helpful. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Bowman.
Thank you. Councilmember Wyatt was kind of right along the lines of my questions. And I have the pleasure of working across the hall from Mr. Whitaker. So I commend you on your dedication. I think the alarm here, or the concern, is that, we're in times of unrest, and, we're getting a low case volume. Is there anything as director that you would think would, help your abilities, or is there anything that you see where residents might lose confidence in coming to the citizens' rights organization?
Well, what could we do? Let me answer the first part. Absolutely. We're doing some of that right now. Well, let me also put it out there and invite you all to make it known as well that we are available, that we are here. A number of your block clubs, your stakeholders meetings, as Councilmember Wyatt made reference to, and others on the line that have certainly been there. Again, we have already established, even during this time of pandemic, we have community virtual meetings that will be underway. Again, we started our first one that was on the topic of race and reconciliation. where we had the NAACP president, Reverend Mark Blue, speak to us, and the number of those who were on the line. And certainly we'll ensure that you all get the invitations on that, and certainly may even reach out to you all to be guests on there and talk about or express your concerns and positions on some of these topics. We're doing that. And as I stated, as soon as I got to the office, that was one of the main objectives, to get out, to touch as many parts of the city, many organizations, to let them know that we are here. Certainly, we're even enlisting and looking into other means to be able to put the word out, social media presence and paper media. We're going to do as much as we could, but again, it takes a collaborative effort in regards to, you know, of course, people here in city government and along our community, to just put the word out and let it be known that we're here. And so we will continue to do that, working vigorously. I'm committed to my community, to my city. I love this city. I believe we could be a model for many cities across this nation as it pertains to what we can do and what we can accomplish when we work together to be able to fulfill those accomplishments.
Good. Look forward to working with you.
Same here. Thank you.
Any other council members? Councilmember Nowakowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being with us today here, Mr. Whitaker. Can you please, note for the record and to also let people know what number should they call, what email should they email, and due to COVID, what restrictions does it have on intake?
There's no restrictions during COVID. We're still available as we've been. We're located right on the City of Buffalo's website. Our direct line, the two numbers, 851-8000, actually is our main line, 851-8000. And of course, J Whitaker, that's JWHITAKER at city-buffalo.com. Direct ways to reach me. And then we also have our confidential secretary. She is Liz Gonzalez. Her information is certainly available through our city website, right on our city website, City of Buffalo website. Look for boards and commissions. You will find the Commission on Citizens' Rights, Community Relations. All that you need is right there to be able to reach us. We're not hard to find at all. And we're more than willing to embrace anyone that comes in and help them in the best way that we could.
Anyone else? I know we do have our Deputy Police Commissioner on. I don't have any questions at this point. It's just a couple items down. So will you be able to stay with us, sir, concerning Hurdle?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I also want to thank the Executive Director for being on. I want to read to you your written mission statement as you submitted it to this body. The Commission on Citizens' Rights and Community Relations of the City of Buffalo strives to eliminate prejudice, intolerance, bigotry, and discrimination, to encourage equality of treatment and prevent discrimination against persons based upon race, ethnic background, cultural background, language, religion, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, disability, nationality, and age, and to assure respect of civil liberties of all citizens. And we know each other personally, so you know that I think the world of you as an individual, and I do think that you are the right person for the job. Here is what I encourage you. We are in the midst of a movement like we have not seen in recent history. The reason there are many concerns about the way the commission is set up now is because it has to be visible if it's going to be viable. Without being visible, and the visibility must go beyond collecting data. It must go beyond making sure that people know where to call. It goes after the call. And because whoever set this up, I didn't, you didn't, but we have a responsibility to follow what the mission was, or to me, eliminate the commission and start from scratch and possibly create something that does meet the current needs of our community. So I encourage you, my friend, to ensure that that mission to strive to eliminate prejudice, this commission should be weighing in, I would think, somewhere when it comes to what the public has asked for, whether it be about hurdle, and you were there on hurdle. So I want to make that clear. You were there on hurdle. Not during you showed up later to address. So I want to be clear. You didn't come out of the bar. But your commission could really help change the scenario if people knew that this commission that is in the charter of the city of Buffalo is doing the mission to eliminate prejudice. And that has to go beyond data. That has to go beyond talking about it. There should be statements and movements according to your own report. And not that you wrote it, it was what was the mandate of this, was to have things and to set up different meetings, all those things. I can't tell you how much this community needs your office to go full head on with your mission.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. I really embrace all of what you said. Thank you. And we will definitely be committed to making that happen.
Thank you, sir. If no other questions, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess we could receive and file this, Majority Leader, unless you wanted to leave it on the table for the other information that you requested. I'm sorry, you're freezing a little bit. So the question is, do you want to leave this?
I'm sorry, why don't we leave it on the table?
Okay, so the motion would be then to table it, Majority Leader?
Yes.
All right, second by Council Member Wyatt. Next item. And council staff, so that people may think that we can see the Facebook comments, we can't when we're on Zoom. So I think that this is so important during committee meeting that somewhere the council members do get a brief of what some of the comments are. So because if we were in chambers, people would be able to come and speak. And I don't want the voices and the ideas, the legitimate voices and ideas of people who are speaking on the issue I don't want them to ever think that we are not hearing them. Many times, and many council members go back and review them, but I think ensuring that we have, because usually the comments can be lumped together for some of them, of those who are concerned about an issue, those who disagree or whatever. And I think it would be valuable to all council members to receive that feedback. Next item.
Item number 4, new playground in Old First Ward community.
Motion, I believe that is to table.
Motion to table, second by Council Member Farrelletto.
Item number 5, violations of the city's apprenticeship law.
Items open.
All right, this item is open. I see here that we do have a speaker. Has the speaker been let into the room?
I do.
Okay, sir, if you'll just state your name for the record, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Matt Kent. I am with the New York Foundation for Fair Contracting. We are a nonprofit dedicated to leveling the playing field in public works construction. Generally, our mission is to help facilitate municipalities, public owners, to ensure that the contractors that they're doing work with, that are performing work for the taxpayers, is being done responsibly, that it meets the very high bars that everyone has set, that it works for the benefit of the public as well as the workers who make it all possible. And that's what brings us before you today. The communication we had shared with the Common Council titled Renewing a Commitment to Enforcement, Strengthening the City's Apprenticeship Law. We unfortunately are here to share the news that the hefty and worthwhile apprenticeship laws that the City Common Council has implemented as best as the foundation is able to tell, are not getting the oversight and enforcement that is necessary to make them meaningful. Unfortunately, without enforcement, laws are many times just words on paper. A couple of the things that we want to stress is, the city rightly implemented apprenticeship requirements on publicly owned projects over a certain dollar threshold because apprenticeship opportunities are a way for local young workers to gain the skills and job opportunities to help them enter the middle class and help sustain our community and have safe work sites where this work is being performed and ensure that the products at the end are high quality. As such, in the city code, section 9613, you see, and as also identified in city bidding documents, ATPs, generally contractors with performing work that is over $100,000 in value of public works construction need to belong to a registered apprenticeship program. On ATP forms, they need to disclose the programs in which they participate, and these programs must be registered with New York State and in good standing. Furthermore, not just so that we don't get paper programs that don't really provide meaningful opportunities for apprentices, we then, the city, I should say, then requires that a minimum of 10% of the hours performed on these projects must be performed by apprentices in these programs. And that is very meaningful to make sure that there is genuine opportunity, not just empty promise. And these requirements of apprenticeship hours have their own disclosure requirements. Contractors are made to submit certified payrolls identifying apprentice hours performed. They are made to submit compliance vouchers for each each request for payment that they send into the city that says we are complying with it. And if they ever fail to comply, if they fall short of the 10% requirement, there is an apprenticeship waiver, an ATPW form that a contractor could, for perfectly legitimate reasons, find themselves in there. So there, and those would need to be accepted and reviewed by DPW to, approve such instances. And in all of these cases, they would need to demonstrate a good faith effort to solicit the necessary apprentices to meet this requirement. This was very well thought through, very well constituted. Unfortunately, what we are seeing is that despite all of this very rigorous framework, this doesn't work unless there is enforcement and application. And the city of Buffalo allows for, and the only enforcement mechanism in the apprenticeship law is violators can have their contracts terminated, which is what brings us to this last fall and winter. The New York Foundation for Fair Contracting, we submitted Freedom of Information requests on a very large city of Buffalo public works project, the citywide mill and overlay project. It was somewhere between $5 and $6 million. And we submitted foils for certified payrolls and other related records, and we did the math ourselves, and we found that less than 3% of the hours being performed on this project, there was something in the area of 13,000 hours done, were being performed by apprentices, nowhere close to the required amount. And as best we were able to tell, it was a single apprentice who was performing all of this work. And multiple months had come and gone. So we then submitted follow-up Freedom of Information requests to go, did the contractor submit an apprenticeship waiver request? Did they submit compliance vouchers telling the city that, yeah, we're totally meeting the 10% requirement? But what we're seeing is we have gotten zero responsive documents from the city to suggest that any waivers were ever requested or granted, or any compliance vouchers, saying they met it or not, were ever submitted. We notified the city of this on January 30th. This contract was ongoing. The work is performed in the summer and fall. It breaks in the winter. It's not a great time to do road work in the city, but it starts again in the spring. We notified the city in January. knowing that more work would be performed on this contract in the future. Unfortunately, we got very little in terms of response. What we did get, however, was later on, just in the past couple of weeks, we got certified payrolls from the city when we submitted a follow-up Freedom of Information saying, let's see what they've done in 2020. And what we saw is the contractor in question, in this case, D&H Paving, that had been at 2.9% apprenticeship, now in 2020 is at 2.6. Since we notified the city of Buffalo, the contractor was not disqualified for its failure to adhere to the city apprenticeship law. They were rewarded with the continuation of their contract, and they did worse. This is a slap in the face, I think, of anyone who believes in the promise that we made to young workers in the area. This same bidder, I should just also note, when we got their experience questionnaire back, was made to disclose, have you ever performed work for a municipality, city, county, state, federal government? The answer was zilch, none, zippo, which I think should set all of our hair on end and probably shouldn't make us terribly surprised with the compliance that we are seeing. This brings us to 2020. There was a 2020 version of this contract, which went to Amherst Paving. The city, once the contract was awarded to Amherst Paving, again, between $5 and $6 million, we saw that through a Freedom of Information request that Amherst Paving submitting they did their disclosures to the city, and they disclosed they belong to a registered apprenticeship program, one they administer themselves. That program has a single apprentice. That same project, this single apprentice, as best we can tell, is the only apprentice that will once again be performing work throughout the city of Buffalo on $5 to $6 million of work. And we saw in 2019 that doesn't work, and it looks like it's about to be happening again. Perhaps there are subcontractors on the project that can help get their compliance up, but thus far, City DPW has not provided responsive documents to Freedom of Information that would answer that question. Even more concerning is a form that was submitted with this bid from Amherst to the City DPW, identified the sole apprentice they had as a trade that doesn't belong to their apprenticeship program. There is plenty of opportunity to suss out, whether or not there are actually any skilled laborers in the labor apprenticeship program that Amherst Paving has submitted to the city. A little investigation could very well suss that out. And these were the concerns that we had that brought the foundation to reach out to DPW and the Common Council ahead of last week's award of the Spot Repair Group 996 contract. And the Common Council was responsive to those concerns and did vote to only award the contract on the basis of compliance with this, with the city's law. And I understand that the Common Council is awaiting response, or perhaps has already received it from the city DPW as to verifying that contractor's ability to comply with the law. As part of our initial notification and the item we brought before you today, we do have a whole bunch of questions that we call follow-up questions to ensure compliance. We think these can be very helpful for guiding the city's effort to finally get right on apprenticeship. Would be more than thrilled to have the Department of Public Works engage with those questions as well, perhaps at some future venue. Thank you for sitting through all that. I know I ran through the weeds for quite some time. I really appreciate the engagement and consideration from you, Mr. Chair, and the council members.
Who's trying to get? Someone's trying to get my attention. Okay. Was Public Works invited to this meeting?
Negative, sir.
Okay, I think that Public Works should be a part of this meeting, especially since we have Mr. Kent here, because we don't have the answers from Public Works. I'll just say generally, and I want to revisit this, I hope, like next committee meeting with Public Works on the line, because we did, and I think it was started by Councilmember Revere in the conversation, just have this conversation. I did make the suggestion that we send it pending them meeting that. I personally think until I hear from Public Works, if what you're telling us is accurate, and I don't have any doubt that it is not, if you got the information from the city, that every time that this council votes on a contract that would have to have apprenticeships, I think that that should be attached to the moving motion. That's number one. So that we make note of that should be attached. But number two is we need to know, because once we vote on it, we are usually not informed of it. I think that the motion may have to have a kind of trigger that where the information comes back to us. And as we talked earlier with the executive director about numbers, not just we want to know how many people. And I remember when this was, and I wasn't on the council, I don't know how long this law has been there, but I know it was so that those persons who live in the city, when we're talking about job creation, because honestly, many of these companies, they're not putting a dime in the city, they're taking from the city, and they're sucking on from the tax rolls and then not finding someone. You can't tell me that it's difficult to find some young person out there who wants to learn how to do paving, who wants to learn how to do these things. And so if what you're telling us is correct, I know that the Department of Public Works, and especially under former leadership and under Mr. Finn, because we've had these conversations, has been very concerned about the program. And I'll just say, I've been in conversations where we found out or where we were informed. And again, the council doesn't run this shop, but we should be getting the information. But I don't take that away from the commissioner because we haven't asked for it. We haven't demanded we want this information. But it's a shame if a company is making $5 million and has one apprentice, one apprentice. And I'd be curious to know the demographics of their apprentice also, because when you look at the rate of unemployment, to me, you would be trying to concentrate on populations that have high unemployment. And if you can't do it, you shouldn't bid. Council members, anyone? Council member Wyatt, and then Council member Revere.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not going to disparage this particular company because I don't know for a fact, but I do know that there was a contractor that was doing sidewalks in my district that was very disrespectful to some of the residents. And we need to kind of weed those individuals out. They should not be getting contracts within the city. So this goes part and parcel to what Mr. Ken is talking about as far as this contract. If there's an agreement that there's supposed to be a number of apprentices, and we're not talking about one, it should be others. And we need to make sure that that is definitely something that's happening. I know that in the past, we have received that form. It was attached to the bids and to some of the proposals, because I commended Mr. Finn on that. However, I didn't know the details that they only have one. And I'm hopeful that's just this one particular company and not others, but we need to find the details out, because I know that the motion for the paving that's taking place in my district was contingent upon us getting that information. And I'm hopeful that it just doesn't have one person. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Revere, and then Councilmember Lumbeck.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and you're right. We asked them to get back to us with the information. And so we did pass it with the condition that you had set, Council President. I think the problem is that we've talked about compliance, but the enforcement part of it, we still haven't seen. So we want to know from the Department of DPW, not just that they're in compliance or not in compliance. What is the enforcement? What do we do then with this company that is not in compliance? Do we then look for another contractor? I think it's important that Department of Public Works starts to look at the enforcement part of this, because they have to condition all of those contractors that are coming after this to make sure that they are in compliance and that there's an enforcement mechanism that they're going to utilize. Until we start enforcing it, it's business as usual in the city of Buffalo. You know, we'll just do the paperwork, we'll provide them, but if there's no enforcement mechanism I think we're going to see more of this before us. So it's important that Public Works begin to talk about enforcement and holding these contractors to the standard that they agreed to in the very beginning. We're not asking them to do something that they didn't agree to when they did the RFP. They agreed to do all these things and they're not doing it. So at this point, I want to hear from Public Works regarding the enforcement if they're not in compliance. Now, we're giving the benefit of the doubt to the commissioner to come back to us and explain to us exactly what he has found out with regards to the discrepancy in the information. I don't know if there's discrepancy or not because we haven't, they haven't given us the information. What we have before us today is the information that Kent has given us. So we want to make sure that there's no discrepancy. And if there is a discrepancy, we need to hold somebody accountable for that.
I agree. Before I go to Councilmember Golombek, Councilmember Beard, it was DPW though that found that in our last meeting that a contractor wasn't in compliance, and I think they reissued or went to the next bidder or something. So I think they did find it. Am I correct?
The last one before, no, the one we talked at that we just approved with the condition. Well, I don't know if they've.
I thought there was somebody before that.
Yeah, it might be somebody before that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I recommended that we go to the second one if we didn't have, if they weren't in compliance, and he said he had to look into it.
But he brought it to our attention, I believe. So we'll bring him back. Councilmember Golombek.
Thank you, Mr. President. First off, I want to thank you for chairing the meeting. I'm having problems with the laptop once again. I want to echo what you had said. I was going to request this as well. I would like to have DPW at the next meeting as well. And also what I'd like to do is have staff with Mr. Kent put together, and even if it's just a little bit of the information, a breakdown of the information that he sent to us that we could have answered by DPW. A little bit of history of the apprenticeship law. I was on the council when it was first enacted, and I remember asking quite a few questions about this. And my concern with the apprenticeship law was to get our kids that lived in the city of Buffalo the opportunity to go directly from high school into a vocational program, you know, in these apprenticeship programs. And I remember being opposed to the apprenticeship law. And unfortunately, to the uninitiated, that meant that I was anti-union, that I was anti-labor, and so on and so forth. But the problem at the time was that a lot of these apprenticeship programs were places that you had to go to in Lancaster, in West Seneca, and most kids from Buffalo, if they didn't have a car, and many of them did not, would not be able to easily get to these places. It was at least 2 bus rides, sometimes 3. Imagine going from my district, the North District, the Northwest corner, and trying to get to Lancaster or West Seneca. Eventually, it was decided that they would try to do something where they would do more recruiting of youth from Buffalo in our schools and so on and so forth. The reason I bring that up is because I would like to see if any of that has actually been done. I'd like to see if there's any programs that are trying to get our young people into these vocational programs, and if there are places that are closer, to Buffalo. I think that with the mayor putting together the training center downtown, that this is something that helps. But I don't know if that's a channel into the apprenticeship program, or if that's a step that you have to take and then get into the apprenticeship program. So I'd like to have those questions answered at the next meeting. Thank you.
Absolutely. Did I miss someone? Just wanted to make sure I got everybody. And the chief of staff just sent a note. He will contact Commissioner Finn for our next meeting. Thank you very much, Mr. Kent, and you're invited into our next committee meeting also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee, for the opportunity to speak with you. Greatly appreciate your commitment to running with this ball.
Thank you, sir. Majority Leader, well, we probably need a motion on this. What are we doing with this? We're gonna table it. Motion to table, second by Council Member Scanlon, who's online. If we could take an item out of order because our Deputy Police Commissioner does have another meeting. If we could go to item number 7.
Motion to take item 7 out of order.
Second by Council Member Farrelletto. That is before us now. Thank you, Deputy Police Commissioner, for staying with us. I know that you have a 3 o'clock meeting, so I appreciate it.
I appreciate you taking me out of order. Thank you.
I put in a resolution about the incident on Hurdle, and the reason is because I think that the more transparent that we are about these and other incidents, it gives the public a level of trust when we just go right at it and talk about it. And this was the incident in which the world saw a man with a knife in his hands as he went as a counter protester to the peaceful protests. And I believe what the resolution asked for, because many in the public have said, that the knife was seen by police. I don't know that, but can you update us on where you are on that portion of the investigation?
Sure. Commissioner Lockwood has opened up an internal investigation to look at the facts and circumstances of the case and see what can be determined through that. So that is ongoing. It started, relatively quickly.
So when the results come back, because I would imagine that the officers who were there had on body cams and all that will be a part of the investigation.
Yeah, there was 2 different locations of the incident. The initial incident, which obviously was widely shared, and then there were officers further down on the sidewalk that, so body cameras will be looked at, and that will be a part of it. Yes, sir. And then how will you inform this body of the findings? So when Commissioner Lockwood reviews the facts and circumstances, then he'll have that information and he can pass along the results that he is legally allowed to, to put out publicly.
All right, that would be helpful. I recently just saw, and I copied it, and I'll send it over to the commissioner, a town that was on the verge. And I want to say that the protests after the initial protests, and I did attend one because they committed to staying on topic of racism. And by and large, they did. But I saw a municipality during this unrest that immediately puts up as much information as they can on the web about an incident like these. There was sound like a computer voice. There wasn't a picture. There was just words and a voice, so that those who are blind would be able to hear the explanation. And then it keeps updating so that as more information is available, the public knows. Is there any way that we keep the public on incidents, not just talking about Hurdle? We know that right now there's a lot of things that go on, whether it's in the streets or especially when it talks about reform. How are we letting the public know? Is that just by press conference, or is there a way to find that out?
So are you specifically referring to an internal affairs investigation, or just in general, anything else that's going on in the city?
It could be an internal affairs investigation. This one was about, unfortunately, a shooting, officer-involved shooting. The next day, it was up on the web. And like I said, I'll share it with you and the commissioner. I thought it was an interesting way. It gave as much information as what they could give legally, but they were fairly in-depth so that people, when they call our offices and say, well, you all aren't doing anything about it. Well, most of the time we don't have that information. As I explained to people, when these incidents occur, I don't know if any other council member gets called. I know I don't get a call. I find out about it on the news. And although we are sometimes blamed for not getting out the information, this information is not even shared with this council. I think it would be helpful in some ways when we have incidents of large public concern, in some way to let the public be aware of where we are. Internal investigation has been open. If that's as far as you can go, then fine. And then when whatever determination is made, that be updated so that people don't have to call our office or call your office for that matter. They can, they're very, very open to. The problem is most of us will not have that information. If not all of us would not have that information, I would propose.
Yeah, sure. I'd like to see that article. It'd be interesting to read that and you know, and where it was.
Yeah, I'll send you the direct link to that department.
Okay.
And I think it's an interesting way and a very transparent way of informing the public. Colleagues,
No, I agree.
do you have anything, any of my colleagues on the line? All right, Councilmember Wyatt.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. Just want to ask a question. In all these situations, all of our officers are they have their body cams and they're on?
Yes, they have body cameras. They have a policy that they have to follow with regards to the use of the body cameras. And that policy is currently also in negotiations with the PVA to finalize.
Okay. So at the end of the day, is all that information uploaded? Is it after they're off their shift with their body cam?
So when the officer docks their body camera at the end of their tour, then it uploads at that point.
Okay. And so do you review it then, or is it something that on a case-by-case basis, you go and look at the body cam video?
So that's part of the policy that's being negotiated with the union right now on review. But certainly if an arrest is made or an internal complaint or an external complaint is made, then that makes that video subject to review. But that is part of the policy that's currently being negotiated with the PVA.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You're on mute, sir.
But we're on the subject of body cameras. It's interesting. When you're looking at the video, is there audio as well?
Yes, sir. The first 30 seconds is without audio, and then at the 30-second mark, audio kicks on. So it's a playback feature. So if I were to activate a camera right now, the audio would be on at this point. However, there's a 30-second playback, so it captures the 30 seconds prior to it being activated, but there's no audio for that playback.
Okay. And as far as being part of a contract, I didn't realize that body cameras are part of contracts, because then you're going to get into the negotiation over every aspect. I don't know, when you said you're negotiating, what do you negotiate? I'm just curious in my mind, what would come up in a contract negotiations with regards to body cameras? They shouldn't be on at certain times, they should be, or evidence gathered. I mean, what's part of the negotiations? I'm just curious to try to understand what goes into negotiations with body cameras that is for transparency for both, you know, the protection of the police officers and the protection of the general public. So I'm just trying to understand, where are the sticking points with regards to body cameras when it comes to negotiations?
So really, when it boils down to discipline, that's the part that has to be agreed upon with the union. So like I said, we are hopeful that we're just about finalized with the policy and its implementation of that policy and agreed upon. So we have a policy that's out, but again, there's when it comes to discipline, that's the portion that has to be mutually agreed upon and negotiated.
Did that answer, Councilman Revere? You froze. Did that answer your question?
Well, I only was able to pick up just bits and pieces because you froze. You mind?
I can repeat that again.
Yeah.
So when it comes to discipline, that's the part that has to be negotiated with the union. We have to come to a mutually agreed upon policy for specifically the area of discipline.
Okay. So everything else, with the exception of discipline, is something that falls within the purview of the department?
Well, yes, but if you were to bring disciplinary action for someone not following a specific portion of that policy, then again, it goes back to the area of discipline. So we're hopeful, that we're just about there, and to get this signed. The union has been very, aggressive about wanting to get this finalized as well. So it's been very active.
Okay. And since we've implemented the body cameras, what have we done in terms of, have we been able to do anything with regards to discipline?
We have. The commissioner has taken action. However, then that's subject to review by an arbitrator, whether or not it is legally acceptable in the realm of arbitration. So that again is being dealt with through the negotiation process. Otherwise, it would have to go before an arbitrator.
Okay, without getting into specifics of names, can you say more or less how many incidents we've had with regards to discipline, with regards to body cameras?
I don't know specifically, but the commissioner has opened up, several cases, not a ton, but several cases where, either, a camera was either activated, delayed, or turned off prematurely for one reason or other. Then you'd have to open up an investigation to find out why. So there's, to the best of my knowledge, not a lot of cases, but there have been a few. I'm a proponent of the body cameras.
As are we. It came out of meetings that we had in Police Oversight Committee. I think it's good for the police officers as well as the general public. But there has to be some teeth into it, with regards to violation of any procedures or any rules set with regards to the body cameras. And I'd like to see that strengthened. I'd like to see some teeth into that. Should somebody violate policy, and especially if it's being done repeatedly. So
we totally agree, and that's what we're working on.
Millions of dollars to invest in this, and it's because the public wanted it. It's a way of gaining the trust of the general public and transparency more than anything else. We've seen the body cameras used. We see videos all the time. Unfortunately, we see people being abused. We see excessive use of force. And at times, perhaps you even see police officers doing great things. So I want to give credit to those police officers as well who have been captured on video serving their communities. So thank you as well. But for those officers that have violated the trust that people have placed on them, and it has been caught on cameras, I think we need to do something with regards to that to gain public's trust. Thank you.
And Councilmember, I'll add to that, police officers embrace this. They want them. Overwhelmingly, the police officers want the cameras. They want to be able to, show what they're dealing with, what they're going through, how these calls are handled, and they know that it protects them just as much as anybody else. So it's got wide support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Deputy Commissioner, and thank you for staying on. And we look forward to a report about the incident, and I'll send you the municipality and how they update. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Bye.
So this can be tabled until we get the report.
Motion to table.
Second by Council Member Farrellletto. We can go back to the agenda.
Item number 6, naming Nikola Tesla Park.
Items open.
This item is open. I know that Councilmember Golombek, although it's an elegant, I agreed with him. He is championing this, so I will give him the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This has been a long-term project that we've been working on with a group of people to honor Nikola Tesla in the city of Buffalo. I think I told you I was trying to get it into the Black Rock Riverside section where he resided and had his, not business, but his laboratory for quite some time. But I think that this is a nice, well overdue honor for an individual who, not to jump in on item number 8, but an individual who had some questions about his past histories, links, philosophies, etc. But he's being honored for the history of his scientific abilities, in particular with electricity. So I want to thank you for working with myself and with the group that was moving this forward, and I look forward to it ultimately getting placed up. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. And Councilmember Golombek, I hope there's something once this is voted on and made into the name given in the park that explains Nikola Tesla so that people understand exactly what he is, especially when we're pushing STEM so much in our community. So thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Majority Leader? We can move this one forward.
Mr. Chairman, this one needs to be tabled until a public hearing can be set for the protocol to name a public park.
All right, is this the moving item? Would this be the moving item, or do we have to file something else?
Negative, sir. This is the item that introduces the idea. Another one will be introduced that will be the actual moving item, and a public hearing in between the two.
Right, so in the past, in Corporation Council, you can let me know if this isn't the moving item, because we know we had this situation in the past. Should this one be received and filed in a moving item, then put on the table, or what should we do with this one?
Assistant Corporation Counsel Carin Gordon. The moving item is usually the letter of intent. We need to have a letter of intent to actually get this done, and then a resolution asking for it to be done. So we normally make the action on the letter of intent. And if we have the resolution before us, that's the one that we approve to actually get the park being named.
So should we be moving this to full council?
At this point, Malcolm, can you put it up? Let me see if it's the letter of intent or if it's the resolution.
It's not the letter of intent. This is just a resolution kicking up the idea.
Okay, so I am assuming that the letter of intent was already done and brought before the council, and we're making a move on the resolution. Because the proper protocol, as we've discussed in the past, is there must be a letter of intent brought to the council. And upon the letter of intent, the council then makes the decision to write a resolution requesting the renaming of the park. That's the usual protocol. I know this item has been around for a while, so I'm assuming that a letter of intent must have been already done back, I think maybe 2 months ago, because this item has been around for a while.
Can you bring the item up on the screen so Corporation Council can see?
Just a moment, sir.
Councilmember Golombek, was there a letter of intent that you remember being submitted for this?
I believe that there was, but I would have to check with Mr. Montour to make sure, but I believe that we did everything that we were required to do between ourselves and that group.
Okay.
Council President,
Yes.
the clerk's office will file the notice of intention at next week's council meeting.
All right. So there will be a letter of intent. Corporation Council, what should we do with this item that is before us?
I would prefer, I think we can make a recommendation. I'm sorry, my daughter's in the room. I think we can make a recommendation to have it approved. And then once we get the letter of intent next week, then we can approve them all. But usually the protocol should be the other way around. We should actually have the letter of intent before we actually have the resolution, because the letter of intent sparks the resolution.
Councilmember, this resolution is acting as the letter of intent has been done in the past and approved protocol by DPW, which will name the park.
All right. I'm going to lean toward Corporation Council. My suggestion would be to send this without rec, and then let's get this procedure really written out plain for the public, because this is the second time that we have on the floor tried to make a decision of what's the letter of intent, what is the resolution, and it needs to be plain. It needs to be an easy to maneuver process. So I think we should send it without recommendation.
Yes, sir. I mean, if you look at the document, it does not say letter of intent. It's a resolution. If we get the letter of intent next week, they both can be approved together. So I recommend that we send this without rec, and next week we approve them all once the letter of intent comes in.
So we'll send it without rec, Majority Leader, in that way, in between time, we could take care of it. But I do, because again, we went through this with the renaming of another building, and it frustrated people, frustrated the council, and we had this discussion. We need to be very clear of what needs to be on that letter of intent.
Motion to send without recommendation.
Send without rec, second by Council Member, he's not on the committee, is he on? Oh, Golombek, he's the chair. And by the way, I was supposed to, at the opening of the meeting, let the public know that he's having problems with his computer, the same problem I was having a couple of weeks ago. So he is present in the room and is participating. All righty, next item.
Item number 8, removing Millard Fillmore name from city property.
Items open.
This item is open. I know that what the title says, but I want to be very, very clear of what the resolution says, because the title can be somewhat misleading in that the resolution is basically calling for a public discourse, a public conversation. We know that there have been public institutions like in the state, one of the universities here, who have removed the name of Millard Fillmore. And for whatever the reasons are, I put forward this resolution, Councilmember Wyatt joined me, in order to hear from the public, which is not what some have done in the past. I thought it was very important when we heard the outcry from many to let's have the discourse. And in a few minutes after the council's discussion, if there's anything from the council, I'll have the corporation, our chief of staff, give people how to weigh in. I encourage there's always going to be two sides and maybe three sides on this. I encourage people to participate in the process, because I know what will happen in a situation like this is that people who are informed or who want something, they will send all kinds of information. And then the people who don't sometimes are not informed of this process. So this is the process. My ears are open already. I'm getting calls from people to be in meetings on both sides of the issue. Some who are asking me to be a part of a Zoom call who are very much against Millard Fillmore's name being on anything owned by the city. And then even today, this morning, I got a call from a group who wants things to stay the same and wants to explain it. I encourage people to get in the discourse, because there's not a lot of places where people say, give me your opinion and why. I think it has to go beyond just saying, I don't want Millard Fillmore's name on something, but why? So that this council can make a decision. Councilmember Wingo, you had the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate you clarifying for the public the intent and the spirit of this resolution, which of course, even the media has gotten confused and mixed up. I'm going to read the heading to one media outlet that posted this title to their news story, and it reads verbatim, and I quote, "Buffalo Common Council approves motion to remove Millard Fillmore's name from city-owned properties." That is a headline, end quote. That is a headline, and I'm glad that you clarified that we have not made any decisions to rename any property in the city of Buffalo. And also, just because the UB stricken or removed Millard Fillmore's name from their academic building, it's a major move, but we have not motioned or approved any renaming of anything as of yet. And just for the record, I am very interested in hearing both sides of this argument, as I am very interested in our history, the history of this country, the history of how we got to be where we are. I am very interested to see how, folks argue on both sides why Millard Fillmore's name should stay and why it should go. But again, too, I'm looking forward to the discussion that this resolution is calling for, not the removal of anyone's name out of history, only because we have to be very careful beginning to wipe history clean and clear of how we actually got to where we are today. And I think it is very important for us to respect that, and also understand how sensitive of a subject this can be on both sides. So again, I'm looking forward to the discourse, the conversation, and all of the opinions that this resolution will bring. You're muted.
Chief of, all right, anyone else? All right, Chief of Staff, Councilmember Wyatt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm appreciative of being on this, and I like the process and how we're going about it. It's not just simply taking our opinions and put it out there for everyone just to accept, but we're open to people's opinions, because I think that we don't want to erase history. However, it doesn't need to be in the forefront of our faces when we know that the individual who is there does not represent what we currently stand for. So if this is something that can be put in our historical museum or some further explanation to why it is, we want the public to weigh in to make sure that we're making the right decision. And it's just not our opinions, but it's what the public's consensus is. And that's our job as lawmakers, to make certain that we are fulfilling the need and the requests and the desires of the public, just not our own personal opinion. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you, sir. Chief of Staff.
And if the public would like to comment on what they would like to have renamed, the current city-owned property that currently bears the name Millard Fillmore, the council has created a poll, which is pinned to the top of the council page. You can visit that on facebook.com/BFLOCC.
All right, and so we encourage that, and especially, again, not just a yes or no, but why. All right, any other discussion? No other discussion. I would say that this would be tabled, Majority Leader.
Motion to table.
Motion to table, second by Council Member Wyatt. We're removing one item from the table, I believe, item 46. Oh, I'm sorry. Did Councilmember Bowman, I wrote down your name for some reason. Did you have your hand up for this?
No, that's okay. I was going to make some comments, but it's most of them have been already addressed. So it's no, my sentiment was already basically said, so it's all good. Thank you.
All right, sir. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
It's the motion. Say it again, Councilmember.
I'm sorry, the motion was to table?
Yes, the motion remains, and then the motion now for item 46.
We have, I take from the table, items 17, 18, 19, 32, 46, and 49.
You got to do it one more time for me. 17, 18, 19.
32, 46, and 49.
All right, second by Councilmember Wyatt. Clerk.
Item 17, report of sale 626 Woodlawn.
Motion to approve items 17, 18, 19, please throw up. 32, 46, and 49.
All right, motion to approve all of those items, second by Councilmember Farrelletta. Any other items on the agenda before us? If not,
Chairman, you were joined by Shatora Donovan. If anybody wanted to revisit the other item, or we can wait until the next committee day.
what's the other item?
That was the compliance with DPW. Title was 20-1087, number 5.
Yeah, so if we were just joined, my recommendation would be we will be revisiting this in 2 weeks. I'm not the chairman of this committee, but he is on. That we would, unless she has some new information, that we would hear from it. She's representing, who is Shatora representing?
Hi, I'm representing the compliance department.
Okay, so we're going to bring Commissioner Finn back. If the committee does want to hear from you now so that you don't have to come back, I'm okay with that. Briefly, would you like to talk about what was presented to us?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's reopen that item.
Okay.
Which item are we going back to?
We want to reopen item number 5.
Motion to revisit item number 5.
Second by Councilmember Wyatt. All right, we heard some interesting news, and you have the floor. Just give your name and position for the record.
Thank you, Shatora Donovan, Chief Diversity Officer for the City of Buffalo. I did want to take a little bit of the heat off of Mike Finn. The contracts are sent out and executed by his department. However, compliance is the responsibility of the inclusionary compliance officer. And so we do have an inclusionary compliance officer who has been monitoring the apprenticeship disparities that we've seen in some of these contracts. So I do want to make this body aware that we are aware and we do not condone any of the disparities, especially within apprenticeship, because it is a requirement. So back in January, when we did receive notice from the Fair Fines and Fees organization, I did personally reach out to the company, D&H Paving at the time, who was very, under the goal, under the requirement of 10% at that time. And I reached out and I told him that we did have this large disparity and that it was very troubling. So he went back and got documentation stating that, and I don't have it in front of me, I apologize, stating that the organization where he gets his apprentices from did assure him that they would have enough apprenticeship and enough apprenticeship hours before the end of his contract. And then next thing I know, the contract term is up and they did not fulfill that requirement. Now, we did have an internal meeting last week discussing what the repercussions would be for the negligence to meet those requirements, right? And we've also been discussing some of the issues with the paperwork, specifically with Amherst Paving, and how we are going to address Amherst Paving before the contract gets too far in and we end up in the same situation as we did. I think it was group 958A, I could be wrong on that. But so I did just want to make this honorable body aware that we are well aware, and between the Office of Diversity, Opportunity, and Inclusion and Public Works and Corporation Counsel's Office, we have been engaged in conversations about how to remedy this situation, because just like this body, it also troubles us. And we're also looking at ways to streamline our compliance process so that you can't get this far down in the process. We're kind of dealing with a little bit more antiquated, paper heavy processes that we are bringing online slowly but surely. And I know Councilmember Wyatt is a huge proponent of what we're doing with that and those softwares. And so we did have some personnel changes over the last few months. And then with a lot of the things going on with COVID-19 and other priorities, we've reshifted, and now we are more focused on making sure that these companies are absolutely complying not only with our good faith efforts, but apprenticeship is a requirement. And we're also providing them with the resources that they need to get the apprentices that they need. Now, we can't necessarily go out and find the laborers or the apprentices, because an apprentice has to be certified by the Department of Labor. So I know there was a comment that, there's people in the community who would want to do this work, and that's true. But in order for it to be a certified apprenticeship, you have to go through the Department of Labor, and there's certain requirements that have to be met on that level for it to count. So I do just want to clear that up. Now, through this, we do have resources through the Beverly Gray Business Exchange Center, Northland Workforce Training Center, and even a pre-apprenticeship program, the Buffalo Employment and Training Center, that we do require our tier 1 contractors to go through before they're given any waivers. But I want to make this unequivocally clear that we do not waive the apprenticeship requirement. There are no circumstances in which we can waive the requirement. The only entities that can waive the requirement are those DOL certified programs. So if they do not have any apprentices in a trade available, it has to be the program that says they don't have any apprentices available. So it's either DOL certified or it's one of the trades.
So if one of the programs says they don't have anyone, does that give then the contractor the ability to just do the work without doing anything else, going to another program?
If it's documented properly, it does.
Is this a local law, right?
It's a local law, and we go based on the state DOL requirements.
Yeah, I think it's horrible, and I think it's horrible, and I think that we need to look at it like right away. And this is why: you can get a contractor who goes to a very small program that does not have diversity, that does not have the ability, and then they give them back a form, from what I'm hearing, and say, we can't find anybody, right? Then that contractor gets a $5 million contract and goes on about their merry way. Is that kind of correct? And not that this is on you, it will be how the legislation is written, right? Is that how the legislation is written?
I don't know if it's written in that specific manner, but what I can say is that if it is properly documented and the program says that they do not have the apprentices for that specific trade, I mean, we can go and say, we need you to go to a different program. What we can't do is require a non-union company to sign on with a union. We do not require that, though there are different, I'll say, consequences if a non-union company signs on with a union, and how they have to operate in perpetuity under that trade, whether they're doing private work or public work. And so in order for these companies to be able to fulfill their requirement, there are DOL certified programs. Now, generally, there's not small programs out there. They're well reputed and well established.
So we heard from one that their program was self-administered. They administer their own program. I think it was, so I don't think that's not their core business. Their core business is putting down blacktop. But I think, and this is not, because I don't have these facts, I think if I didn't want to deal with apprentice, I could start my own program and then say I can't find anybody and then still get city work. And to me, that's a go around. And I believe when we're talking about $3 and $5 million contracts, that you've got some people out there who do the go around, and then they don't get the apprentice. And the unfortunate thing in this legislation, which I'm going to ask not Corporation Counsel, Chief of Staff by Thursday to put in a resolution to review this law. And let's look at this law because this is horrible. And millions, I said this before you got on, I don't know if you were on then, millions of dollars of contracts that are paid for by the tax dollars of the city of Buffalo. And what the intent of the law was, as Councilmember Golombek said, it was really to get young people who live in this city an opportunity to move forward in some of the trades. In hearing what you just said, and I really thank you, by the way, for being very, very just true about what's going on here. If they need to be certified apprenticeship, then that has to expand, number one, so that we are not saying, well, you got 10 kids down on Southampton who want to learn, but they didn't know until the summer, and that you had to be certified. Second of all, if a company gets on board at the last minute for their apprentice and they backload it, so they throw 10 apprentices, those apprentices, they might get the hours, but they're not going to get the experience that an apprenticeship program is supposed to get. All they're going to get is the last part. Here, we're going to give you a broom. You should up what we have already put together. We did all the layout. We did everything. You get on the end so we meet the numbers, because these folks who are making and getting a $3 and $5 million program, they've got and I keep on using this analysis. When you go to their house, they got the in-ground pools. The apprentice, they barely might have a blow-up pool. And part of that, the apprenticeship program should be to equalize that out with the city of Buffalo's tax dollars. And so I'm going to ask for a review of this apprenticeship program law to be brought to this council and to work with your office, because you have the expertise. You know what you're doing. You've done this before. So it has to be straightened out, because in its form right now, it's horrible and it is not benefiting the people who should be benefited from. Councilmember Watt.
Can I just respond?
Yes, you may. Yes, you may.
Okay. Thank you, Council President. So I think what you just said was quite beautiful because you've identified a systemic issue that we face and something that is faced in my department in many of the things that we address. And I would just like to give you a little bit more perspective in that the apprenticeship requirement is 10% of the hours of all hours worked. We also have a city resident requirement, which is either 25 or 30%, depending on the amount of the contract of all hours worked. We also have a minority goal, workforce goal of 25% of all hours worked, and a female hourly goal of 5% of all hours worked. And so we can't always, now, if you get an apprentice that's a female and a minority who lives in the city, boom, 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 you've kind of got them all in one. But we can't always guarantee. Now, while the apprenticeship requirement is quite provocative, it's not the only way that we get to that end. And depending on the program or the trade, we can't control where that apprentice comes from. So it is wherever that apprentice, that program sends that apprentice from, fills that requirement. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of perspective on that too, I don't think that the apprenticeship program is the end all be all of how we increase inclusion to these contracts. And we do measure in other ways those exact issues that you've identified.
Councilmember White, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the detail, Satura. But I think the whole thing is that we want to make certain that people in the city of Buffalo have opportunity. And these companies that we're talking about aren't new companies. They're companies that have been around for a while. So for them not to be in compliance is really kind of frustrating because it's like, well, they got it the year before, or they probably got it the year before that, because they're specialized for the most part. There's only a few. And for us to be at this point that they're not in compliance is somewhat disconcerting because they knew what the requirement was. I've complimented Mike Finn in the past when we've seen that document that these apprentices were part of this project, but that's not always. Sometimes you don't see that document, not to say it wasn't done, but I'm hoping that your department is making certain that all I's are dotted and T's are crossed. But these companies that they brought up today are companies that we've been dealing with for a number of years. So for them not to be in compliance is really disconcerting that they would not be in compliance. This is not new.
So thank you, Councilman. And what I will say is that D&H, this was their first big contract with the city of Buffalo. And we did monitor their utilization overall very closely. And actually, they did a great job on minority business utilization, women utilization. They did struggle with apprenticeship and some of the workforce requirements. In other areas, though, they actually exceeded their goals. I do understand that we have to make sure that folks and organizations and firms are meeting their requirements across the board, and what we're doing from the beginning of that contracting period, right? Like that's really important. As D&H was starting, we were really shifting gears in the compliance department. So we all kind of learned and grew together. But I do appreciate that the apprenticeship goal is very important and it is a priority for us. We also monitor many other things that I do think have quite a significant impact on the economy. And despite the fact that their apprenticeship requirement was wanting, they actually did quite a good job of infusing the community with economic dollars in other ways.
Okay. So maybe D&H may not be held to the letter at this point because they're new and they excelled in other areas, but Amherst Paving has been around for a while.
Correct.
So we're with them.
Correct. And so we are diving deep, trust me, as we speak, into those certified payrolls. And we already have an analysis drawn up. There's some things about some of the documents that have been sent to us after the fact, and how we've compared them to documents that they've submitted at bid that we have questions on. And so we're going back and we're reviewing all of those elements to make sure that Amherst Paving is going to follow not just the apprenticeship requirement, but all of the requirements that we have for compliance, because, you know, not one is not more important than the other necessarily, right? I think they all speak to those systemic issues that President Pridgen, Council President Pridgen identified. And so I thought it was important to get on this call to add a little context to the overall contract, because I understand that there's a special interest group that identified an issue, but there's just a little bit more to the compliance department that I think that this honorable body should be made aware of.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just say the difference between where they did well is the difference between those who are eating and those who want to eat. And that's why the apprenticeship program is dear to the hearts of many, because even though they may have done good in MWBE, those are businesses that are established. The folks on our streets who constantly say, you know, I'm looking for work, I'm trying to get in a program, that's very important, because those are the ones in our society that struggle the most. And if we don't keep a bright light on this program and ensuring that these contractors are doing what they say, then those who criticize the city for not trying to help make a way, especially when it comes to the use of city dollars, then I think we failed the ones who need government the most. And that's why this is important. My last question is, you talked about you all are getting together to figure out what will happen to a specific company when they don't meet it. There's no already set fines for that at all?
They're not codified, no.
Yeah, that's why I think this law needs a review. To me, if you're getting $5 million, your fine should be a portion of what you did not make. And then that fine should go toward apprenticeship programs and getting people into work, and not just going into the city budget.
I could not agree with you more. And I would just add to that, they should go to diversifying apprenticeship programs, because we have a huge problem with diversity in apprenticeship programs as well. So while, you know, we're looking to the apprenticeship requirement to really satisfy or create more job opportunities for folks within the city of Buffalo and maybe from historically under-resourced communities, we don't have enough people from those communities in the programs, right? So the folks who are actually apprentices aren't representative of those neighborhoods. So that's another point of perspective that I wanted to add to this conversation.
Well, any other council members? If not, I thought Mitch was coming toward when I saw him coming toward the camera. I want to thank you for honesty and clarity and just saying it. That's all the council ever asked for. Say it so that we can work together to make something better and don't just give me lip service. So since you have been on, I'm not sure, well, I promised the person who sent in a report for the next committee meeting. I just don't think we have to go as in depth, so we don't have to, you know, hear it. But I would like either yourself, whoever, you know, I think you probably are the one who can answer that question the best, as you did today.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anybody else on that subject? All right. Was that our last item? You're muted, Majority Leader. So we see your lips moving, but we don't hear the sound.
Motion stands table.
Motion stands. Next item.
No other item. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second by Councilmember Joel P. Fairletto. Thank you. We're adjourned.